You're watching News 24 Live. South Africans have been encouraged to lower their sugar intake after a recent sugar tax was announced at the budget speech, but are now being warned of the dangers of excessive salt. Mariska van Aswegen from Pharma Dynamics is here to tell us a bit more. Mariska, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Apparently it's National Salt Awareness Week. What's that all about?
The importance of National Salt Awareness Week is to make people aware of how much salt we actually consume, especially if we compare South Africa's salt intake to other countries, especially the westernized countries. We consume about 40 grams of salt a day, and the recommended guideline set by the World Health Organization is 5 grams a day. So we are using a lot more salt than what is good for our health.
Now, when we look at the health risks associated with excessive salt intake, obviously the big ones being high blood pressure, hypertension, and then that leads to a lot of cardiovascular problems, which is where you guys come in.
Absolutely, Nick. Hypertension directly linked as a risk factor for heart disease, heart attacks and stroke. If we look at the statistics in South Africa, about 130 people have a heart attack every single day and 240 people will suffer a stroke daily. So if we just look at those risks and the incidence of those heart conditions, it's important for us to look at all the risk factors, and salt being one of the major risk factors for heart disease or for high blood pressure, which then eventually lead to these heart conditions.
Now, why has a lot more awareness been sort of suddenly created around this? I mean, what are these stats like compared to 5 years ago?
If we just look at the increase in the use of high blood pressure medication, today about 3.1 billion rand in the private sector in South Africa is being spent on heart disease medication, and that is a growth of about 23% versus just 5 years ago. So we're seeing a lot of usage of these medications, increase of usage of these medications, which is in line with the increase in incidence that we are seeing, and the risk of an epidemic that we are facing with regards to non-communicable diseases, especially then heart disease.
So now, when you compare South Africa's salt intake and their discretionary salt intake, so the salt that they add themselves, how do we compare to the rest of the world?
If we look at that comparison as well, we add about 40% of our salt usage per day is added after we prepared our meals. So that's at the table, and a lot of it is habit because we often just reach for the salt shaker before we even tasted our food. Compared to other westernized countries, their discretionary salt usage is about 15%. So again, it's a lot higher, and also just to break that habit is key for us to reduce our salt intake in South Africa specifically.
Now, is that because South Africans aren't aware of the health risks, or is it because our food is more bland, or what are the reasons?
It is in a way because of the fact that it is habit. We've just grown so accustomed to adding the salt ourselves, and we need to desensitize ourselves. If we just reduce our salt usage and intake dramatically all of a sudden overnight, your food will taste bland. And the key is to find salt alternatives, to look at the way we prepare our food, the type of food that we eat. So your processed food contain already a high percentage of salt, and to try to find those salt alternatives, fresh ingredients, fresh herbs and spices, and of course lemon juice is the new salt, as they say. So just a squeeze of lemon juice at the table after you prepared your food, and you will be surprised at the difference that it would make in the taste of your food.